this is Bert, and if you know me, then you know I love my Return of the Jedi Jabba the Hutt Goons. And so when Hasbro announced that they were re-releasing several hard-to-find vintage collection figures, I was thrilled. And I finally just got the full set because Weequay took a long time to arrive. And so what I wanted to do was compare the old vintage collection versions to the new 2023 versions. And as you look at them behind me here, you can see they're pretty darn similar. There isn't much that they changed.
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
But as we look at them up close, you're going to see that Hasbro has made some changes when they made these 2023 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi offerings. So let's dive in.
Low Skill Customs.
Okay, I've got the old one on the left and the new one right here on the right. And one thing that you're going to hear from me a lot as I open these guys up is that the pins have been corrected. So there was one problem with this particular batch of aliens back in the day, and that is when they made them, the joints, see here at the knees and again at the ankles, they didn't make them match the proper part of the body. So as you look at this guy, you can see that they used the gray of the arms for all the joints. So right here, and again at the ankles, there's gray, whereas in the modern figure, dun, 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 they've corrected that, and it does look a lot better, okay? I mean, if you had this guy seen from behind or just posed, because, you know, even just posing them, they got this stripe of color through there that's kind of annoying. Now with the modern one, it's all fixed. Let's look at the rest of the details. The belt buckle on the new one is much shinier. The eyes have a shine to them that the old one doesn't have. The black of the eyes. The colors are very much the same. I guess there's a bigger distinction between the straps and the clothing underneath. It's a little bit, just a little bit more visible on the original version than it is on the newer one. They handled the wash of color differently, or maybe it's dry brushing differently on the faces. On the old one, you can't see the difference between the grayish brown and the reddish brown, but it shows up pretty well on the new one. And it looks like, whereas the neck on the old one was just one color, there's no color variation there that I can see. Yeah, it's just solid. They actually, on the new one, corrected this, and there's a little bit of the dark brown and a little bit of the red brown to make it better match the head. Still not a perfect match for the head, to the head, but it is a bit better than the old one. So I'm going to say I think the new one is much improved between those pins and the other coloration differences on the face and neck. I think he's a lot better. Now, in my opinion, I kind of feel like the arms should just been a little bit bluer like the old vintage toy, but it's a pretty decent color, and I think some pictures look bluer than others, so it's kind of hard to say what's really true there. All right, so Weequay is definitely a winner, this new one. One thing that's a little bit disappointing is that they just used the same old color and deco, which is nothing, as they did on the old one, whereas you got the Wooof figure has such a nice looking, what is that, Vibro X thing. I really wish that they would have just made them all match one another, but oh well. I get why they didn't want to make any really significant changes when they updated these. All right, so now let's take a peek at our Kithabas. Okay, again, the old one on the left, the new one on the right. You can see, once again, right off the bat, the pins have been corrected, okay? I thought they got the legs wrong, but they didn't. They just got the elbow joint wrong. But now what's happened is something about how they created the wash of color on this figure. Actually, you know what? It's not a wash. That's what it is. So now this is all blank gray, and that doesn't match as well. So the pin's been corrected, but now the elbows have this really light spot to them. Okay, and you'll see the reason why is the extra coloring on the arms is not actually a wash like it once was. It is actually dot printing. You can see they overdid the dots, and the dots climb into the shoulder pads a little bit on mine. And unfortunately, the dots end exactly in a straight line here, so it looks pretty unnatural. Whereas the wash of color just looks really great on the old one, and it doesn't have that bright spot at the elbows. All right, so the red joint at the ankle has been corrected. That's now black. The tan of the vest sort of thing looks pretty similar. You can see he's got new photoreal eyes painted on there. They look pretty nice. Looks like they mispainted the teeth on my new one though. They painted the white too low. It looks a lot better on the old one. So that's a little bit disappointing. The neck is maybe a little bit too light on the new one, but it was a little bit too light on the old one too, but I think the old one's better there. And then of course the other difference is some old ones have dark brown bandanas when they really should be red. And of course the new one gets that right. There's shinier buttons on the new one. I think the old one, I would call that black. Maybe this is black too, but it almost looks coppery in the light, but they stand out as being much shinier. So just some subtle differences. Now the one thing that I wish they would have corrected that they didn't is Kithaba is supposed to have a black stripe down the side of his pants, and they didn't take this opportunity to fix that. All right, now we're going to look at Wooof. And again, they look pretty much identical from a distance. And Wooof is one where they actually got all the pin joints, all those things painted the proper color. So that's not something they had to fix here. Just like Barada, they've chosen not to do washes and dry brushing, but everything is actually dot printed. So if you look at the old Wooof, all that light gray on the brown gray, all of that is dry brushed. Someone or some machine literally took a little bit of gray paint and brushed downwards against the grain of all those wrinkles to make those effects. So if you look at one Wooof figure to another, they all look a little bit different because, you know, different amounts of paint and different areas are painted first or more or whatever. So it gives them this kind of splotchy effect. You can see that right there by the knees. On the new Wooof, what they did is actually they did dot printing again. So just about every 2023 Wooof is going to look exactly the same. Those are all printed. There's no brushing on of color. But you can see from a little bit of a distance, the effect is pretty much the same, really. It's just that you're going to find that all these new Woofs are about identical. The fabric, it looks like it's a little bit fuzzier on the old one. I do like that appearance more. This one looks a little more neat and tidy. This one looks a little scruffy, but that's pretty similar. The giant, I don't know, ammo canisters on the new one are painted much shinier, and they got the stripe correct. The stripe's a little bit too skinny versus how it's been sculpted in places on the old one, and that is correct on the new one. Let's see, with that dot printing, one thing I didn't mention is that they didn't put any new color on the knee joints on the back. So that's something, looks a little bit more believable on that knee. All right, now let's look at the face. The new one is still on the right, the old one's on the left. The color of the straps and stuff on the helmet got a little purpler. They're a little bit more orange on the old one. Maybe the horns seem to be a little bit more pronounced and a little less faded into the skin. Here on the old one, yeah, they've got a little color to them, but the color almost fades into the green of the skin. Whereas here there's a clear demarcation between the horn color and the skin color. I kind of like the old one better, actually, in that regard. Finally, we have Nikto Skiff Guard. So let's take a look at him. All right, now with this figure, they have eliminated washes. On the old one, there's a dark wash of dark gray on the gray of the pants. Makes those padded sections really stand out and look kind of grimy and dirty. This, they just literally do not have any wash. There's no extra color on those at all. Okay. They have corrected the pin problem in the back. They also eliminated the wash on the sleeves. So the sleeves don't have any variation in color. They're just solid color with no wash on them. What that does is it makes this second little shoulder pad thing, which isn't really painted very carefully. It makes that extra white when in fact it should be a darker gray than the sleeves. So they both got that aspect wrong. The old version has painted little ties on the shirt or the tunic or whatever and they're much more subtle, probably because of the wash of gray that's also on the tunic that's missing on this one. So the white stands out a lot, especially then when there's an error here and they didn't print it properly on this guy. Now, as far as the armor, they each had a little bit of trouble getting around the edges of that gray chest plate thing that he's got. You see on the old one, there's a swatch of green still stuck there, but on the new one, that green is all the way around the outside. They really, really did not wrap that paint around like they did on the old one. So the old one's a lot better in that regard. Now, as far as the faces go, I felt like the old ones went a little bit too dark. I do like that the new one looks a little bit more red, a little bit less dark. The eyes are shinier, but the old one's not that bad. And also on the new one, the distinction between the gray color of the tips of all these horns that he's got, that gray color is darker and stands out much more than the old one. So I would say overall, Nikto from the neck down is much worse on the new one. But from the neck up, I think they've actually improved him. I really rather like how he looks. Maybe the horns on the helmet thing are a little bit too bright white and clean looking, but it's better on the new one. But everything else is really way better on the old one. So this guy was a real step backwards. All right, so here are my final thoughts about these figures. First of all, Weequay, definitely improvement in just about all areas. The head and neck. I'm even noticing now the eyes almost make it look more like a living creature, which is really cool. Just a little bit of shine to them. And maybe, I can't tell if it's shine or if they put a little white speck in them, but they look great. His belt buckle literally looks like it's metal now, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing. So I definitely all around an improvement. Kithaba, I know I was complaining about the teeth earlier, and that was because I maybe had this thing way too zoomed in. I can't even tell the difference with the naked eye. You can't even see it. And when you look at him, if you're going to look at the old one and you're just going to have him posed with his arms at his side, those tan stripes in the middle of his elbows are pretty annoying. And so with the new one, I guess he's only bad if you have him, if you're looking at him from behind. So I'd say maybe overall he's an improvement too. I think the teeth thing is completely non-issue if you look at it in real life and not zoomed in on a camera. Wooof, we talked about the horns on his face. I do still prefer the old one, and I do prefer the old one's fabric there, but really not that big of a difference. The shiny metal, I just love this new paint that they're using that really, I mean, it's close. I mean, why couldn't they paint a C-3PO with that? It's so shiny. It just looks so much like metal. It's really fantastic. I just think that's cool. So I'm saying three out of 3 so far. You got winners, and then of course there's Nikto. And I gotta tell you, I know some people might actually like the newer one better because if you want to know something, it does actually look more reminiscent of the old vintage toy if you had them next to each other. But part of what I like about the new modern toys is that they look more real. I love the vintage Kenner stuff for what it is, but for the modern stuff, I want washes of color. I want them to look dirty and beat up and everything like that. So my preference is still the old one, though I do like that they lightened the face a bit on that new one. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope that helps you decide whether or not you're going to pick up these new ones. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.